Hey everybody, Dr. Randi Shannon back here. I have some amazing guests today. I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves and give a brief background on where they've been and what they have going on. So we're going to start with Dave. Dave, if you would give everybody who you are and how you and I actually have met.
Well, I think we must have met about 10, at least 10 years ago or more.
Hmm.
And uh, um, my best friend, Martin Graham, who was a professor emeritus from UC Berkeley, and him and I were doing research on electrical, uh, basically cows. And we found that these high frequency transients affected daily milk production of cows. And of course, the cow was exposed to it on the ground. So then we were like, okay, how did it get on the ground? Well, it was coming from the wires and the electric utilities putting it in the ground. But then the electric utility doesn't really generate this stuff. So it was coming from modern day electronic devices. And so what happened was we thought, well, okay. And then, of course, these farmers said, this doesn't just affect our cows, it affects my wife. She comes into the barn, she has heart palpitations, falls down, passes out. Well, by the time they get her to the hospital, an hour has passed, and so she's fine. They can't find anything wrong with her. So that we thought, well, okay. And there's something called radio wave sickness. It's from exposure to these higher frequencies. So what we did is we said, well, if we could figure out a way of removing it, okay, then things should change. And it did. And we've done research and not then of course um, we'd had our own research on it. I went to Russia, spent a lot of time there, of course. And because there was nothing printed here, and both Graham and I were ex-military, so we really couldn't say too much about this stuff. So we had to get printed information. So I spent a lot of time with the health department in Russia, Kazakhstan, uh, the Middle East, Ukraine, because they had done a tremendous amount of research. And then people like Sam Milham, who had known about this before, he didn't have the measurements, but we actually just contributed to the measurements. But he wrote books on the electrification of America, things like that, where he could show the statistics as the modern day electronic devices came into play. People became more ill, and these diseases kind of took off.
That's amazing.
So,
So you have a background in the military.
yes, I was in the United States Air Force. I was an electronics technician. I spent 4 years there, and when I got out, I started my own business, an electrical business, because, um, well, I didn't. There wasn't. Nobody wanted missiles in somebody's bedroom or something, in civilian life.
Yeah. Well,
I
maybe today. Maybe.
yeah, maybe, but in those days, so electricians made more money than TV repairmen, for example. So yeah, but I started my own business, and I've been here 50 years plus. So it's yeah, and like I said, Martin Graham, I mean, we are electricity. We dream electrons.
Amazing. I love it. I love it. So we'll go into that because I actually flew to Wisconsin and met up with you years ago. And you and one of your staff put me through a ton of experiments that had to do with electricity. And at the end of the day, I just really felt sick. I didn't feel good at all. You guys at the very end grounded me out and you had me step on something and you had exposed me to all kinds of lights and electricity. Can you talk about that, like the various ones that you?
Yeah, yeah. I remember you when you were here. Okay, so we kind of like a training session and stuff, and so of course we used you as the guinea pig. But yeah, but we're measurement experts. I mean, we can measure this stuff, and we know how to measure it, and we figured out a way of actually measuring the current in your body. So of course we could say, okay, here we put an EKG patch on your chest, and we put hooked it to a meter, and then we could say, okay, stand up, and then we'd see the numbers go up if we were underneath a fluorescent light, and you could say, okay, raise your hand a little higher, and then of course we can see the current increase and go down. We expose you like the light dimmer switches, for example, and we can actually hear the current in your body, when you vary the dimmer switch. So yeah, we run you through a regular um, test cycle, I guess. And of course, this stuff does affect you, and you're right, you don't feel good. And your body will build up a charge if you're a person working in an office and you're working underneath fluorescent lights all day, you're going to build up a charge. And so it's good to discharge. The earthing or the grounding isn't really what we want to do in North America because we have a grounded wire system. So you're actually connecting yourself to a wire. But it's good to discharge. So if you take this conductive surface and you stand on it like a piece of, I always just tell people, just use a piece of aluminum foil right out of the kitchen cupboard, and just stand on it. Then what happens is then you'll get the same amount of electrons on the side of your body, on each side. You're even, you're balanced, or whatever you want to make it simplified. But so then you will discharge, and we can actually watch the meter, and we can watch you discharge. And a person who's a little heavier set takes less time than a person who's thin and more petite. They take a little more time, but it's about a little over a minute, and everybody would be totally discharged. But
Amazing.
don't connect yourself to the ground because you'll charge yourself back up.
Yeah. Amazing. When here in Miami, when I want to like really ground out, I go straight over to the ocean where even my cell phone doesn't work.
No, that's good. And on the beach, you got salty water, so it's
Mm,
very conductive. And so, yes, if you're walking on the beach or something like that, you are actually discharging.
amazing. So if there's telephone poles or electrical poles, that's not then being put into the ground in that area. It's only when you don't see the poles. Is that correct?
No, in North America, 70% of all, and this is 98 figures, 70% of all the current that goes out on the power lines has to get back to that substation. All of it has to get back to the substation, but 70% of it was coming back on the ground. So if you're by the beach or you're on the ocean, you're really not in the path of any of those wires, and it's very conductive. So you're like a bird sitting on the highline wire. Uh,
Okay.
and it's very conductive and salty water, the sand, things like that. So yeah, it's not psychosomatic. It's a real physiological change, and you can measure it.
Okay. And so that's the ocean. What about more mountainy or rural type of areas?
Well, don't walk barefoot. I mean, we've shown that you can, like cows, just this little low voltage stuff affects the cows.
Hmm.
Uh, and it affects it big time on if they get shocked a lot during the day, their milk goes down big time that day. And the effects aren't like a delayed reaction. Like if we shock the cow a lot during the day, her milk is affected that day. If we cut it back that day, her milk goes up that day. So the results are kind of like follows immediate. It isn't like a delayed reaction, like 2 days later it affected you or something like that.
What about fertility? Does it affect that?
Oh, absolutely. The current goes up one leg and down the other. If you take cows, that current goes up. If the cows, first of all, they don't like come into heat. If they do come into heat and they get bred and it takes, okay, then they'll probably when they come back, do a herd check, then she's either aborted or absorbed. So it's definitely affects fertility. Yes, no question about it.
So it's not just cows, it's people too.
Oh, because if a person has a lot of ground current, that current goes up one leg and down the other, it crosses the uterus.
Amazing information. That's so important for people because for a number of reasons, fertility is down.
Yes, and if you look at, we've had people who work for like IBM and in banks,
Hmm.
places like that, and they just miscarriages or they can't get pregnant. In fact, my neighbor, they were in their 40s, in the muscle cars and things like that, and I put some filters or cleaned up their electrical environment, and you know, we said the rabbit died, but I mean, she got pregnant, right away. And it's like, but we've had a lot of people, if they clean up their electrical environment, then yes, they get pregnant.
Amazing. Even Elon Musk is talking about, populations and again, number of reasons we all know for over the last few years what's been going on, but that is another reason that just helps catapult us in the world of being really at a crisis level. Um,
Well, when I grew up, uh, you know, probably 15% of my class, they got their girlfriends pregnant. I mean, so anyway, it's like, and in those days, you married them. But like now, I mean, people are living together, married for a long time, and they just fertility clinics were unheard of when I grew up.
Yeah.
Now they're everywhere. People are having all kinds of problems, and Sam can address it more than I can, but it does affect fertility, at least in animals that for sure we know for sure, and in humans that what I've seen.
Amazing. So I think it's a good time to bring Sam in. Sam, if you would hold up your book, I would love for everybody to go out and buy this book. Where can they get it, Sam?
Amazon.
Amazon. Okay. Yep. It's called Dirty Electricity.
That's published by iUniverse, but Amazon's got a copy of it.
Okay.
You can
Outstanding.
buy
And
it
it's
from
not even
Amazon.
expensive.
12
I think
bucks.
it's like $10 on Amazon or
That's
something.
about it.
Yeah. So Sam, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you know what you know, and what do you know?
I'm 92 years old, and
Young.
I was born in Albany, New York, East Coast like you, and went to medical school there. And in the early days, I wasn't. The thing about medicine, it bored me because everybody got the same sort of stuff. If you look at what causes of death, half people die of cancer, of cardiovascular disease, and the rest of them get lung problems and other things. And so I worked in emergency rooms and on the wards, just saw the same thing all the time. If you had a rare case, it was a big deal. So I got thinking, what causes all this difference? And then one of my, so I interned in Boston at the Public Health Service Hospital, and I didn't have any idea about this electrical field stuff until uh, I, I I started driving from my home in Washington State when I was working. I took a job at the state health department because I was interested in what caused disease. Treating it was no thrill, because people got better by themselves most of the time. But anyway, one of my friends, I rented a place in Southern California, and I went to EMF meetings, and at one of these meetings, I met a guy. What's his name? You know, Dave, the guy who worked for you. What was his name? He worked
Oh,
for me.
I'm not sure.
You sent him to Japan, and you sent him to China. I mean,
Oh, yeah, yeah, the name slips my mind too. So,
well, anyway, yeah. So I met this guy who worked for Dave, and he had his filters. David, David, and Dr. Martin Graham developed these filters. Why don't you hold the filter up? She had a
Actually
hold
throw, yeah.
yeah.
Danny, you got yeah, you get a better view.
So this guy who worked for Dave had had some of those filters, and so I quickly called Dave and asked about him, and I got myself these filters, and I went and met Dave, and I said, "Hey, this is what's going on," and and it was obvious to me that most of our diseases were caused by EMF.
Mhm.
You know what's going on. So I've been telling that to people for 30 years now, and nobody pays attention to it. In fact, in Europe, they don't put the return current in the ground. So, so you get big differences in mortality and morbidity in various places of the world, and it all correlates with EMF. And if we could just get this country, if we could just rewire our grid so that we don't put the stuff into the ground, we'd cure a bunch of people right away. But that's not how it goes. So I started after I met Dave and got interested in the CMF stuff. I started looking at differences in mortality patterns. And one night down in California, I got the newspaper. A guy had written an article about cancer cluster in a school. So I called the teachers and I went and did a study of that and wrote it up. And it showed clearly that they worked in a room that had high dirty electricity, high frequency voltage transients. They had a greater risk of certain cancers. And that really convinced me that we were on the right path. So we've done a bunch of other studies looking at differences in geographic distribution of cancer and other diseases, and look at racial differences, and there's no end to looking. And so out with Dave, we looked at the Amish. They people who don't live with electricity, they live longer lives. They're healthier, and the little kids don't get the diseases of childhood if they don't live on a grid. And it's all right there. It's in this little book. Pick up this little thing and read this and do what it says. You can increase your life. Look at me.
Amazing. How do you live? Tell us how you live. What's your electricity situation there?
So I've got these filters in all my outlets in the house, and I've been watching the ground current at my house, and I live on the tidal cove, saltwater cove, and about 200 yards from where we're sitting now, there's the main distribution line goes down under the ground, and any place you see these little gray transformers up on a pole in North America anyway, in Australia and some other places, there's a wire running into the ground to put that current back in so it goes back to the substation. So I measured there. I get a ground rod out there and I measure between the transformer wire to the ground and a ground rod, and that's so I can actually measure the current. And so I've done that over the years, and it's going up about tenfold since I've been living here for 50 years. So it's getting worse, but it's not getting worse in my house because I've got these filters in all my outlets, and I shut my computer off at night. I don't carry a cell phone. I have one here, and I just use it when I travel.
Mm-hmm.
So
those are some great tips, and I'm going to just show it. And Dave, you can talk about it if you want, or Sam. This actually measures, and I'm going to tell you guys, before I pick this up, for a year, I had been reading under the same light before bed every single night, not knowing. Then when I flew out and I went through all the testing, I came home, or ordered it shortly thereafter. I came home with the measuring device and plugged it in next to my bed, and I was horrified at the numbers of dirty electricity that had been coming off of just the one lamp. And I want to say it was up in the 2000 megahertz, I think is what. And so then what I did is I plugged in this device, and it brought it down to about an 8 or a 9, which was now a much more livable number.
Sure.
So do either one of you want to talk about those numbers? What's acceptable?
Well, the problem with those numbers is now new appliances have transmitters and receivers in them to measure the stuff. And so if you buy an appliances, make sure they don't have, but you probably can't get appliances. You have to buy used ones but my appliances are all clean. But I go into new houses and you take that little meter you got there and you plug it in the kitchen and it reads off scale. Yeah, that one there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the numbers are, Martin Graham and I use an oscilloscope, okay? And so you can actually see the wave. If you remember when you were here, we had a oscilloscope set up. You can actually see this, and you can see the high frequencies. Okay, so if you made the human body into an electrical model, it would look like 3 resistors and 2 capacitors. A capacitor is a short to high frequency. So when you get above 2 kilohertz, okay, then all that energy will dissipate internal to the human body. So you don't want it going internal. Now, so oscilloscopes cost about minimum $5,000. So the average person isn't going to buy an oscilloscope. So what we did is we needed to make a poor man's oscilloscope, okay?
Here.
Yes. And so it's real easy to use. There's not even an on and off switch. You just plug it in. So not always, but 50 on that meter is usually above 2 kilohertz, okay? So you want to be below 50 because then it's not going internal. So that's kind of what the number means. And when you're over 2,000, of course, it's really high. So we want to keep it under 50 if we can. Now, Sam has done some research with neurotransmitters. He collected people's urine for 12 weeks at Olympia, Washington Library. Nobody had less than 300 neurotransmitters coming out of their urine, okay, or in their urine, coming out of their body. Now, you don't want to have any coming out. Neurotransmitters is as you know, it's like the electrical grid of your immune system. So if you don't have an immune system, you got a problem. So, but anyway, then he put these filters in, and then nobody had more than 3 neurotransmitters in their urine within 8 hours. And the number happened to be 35. Professor Magda Havas has done research with MS. She's done research with kids in schools. She's done research with blood sugar. Now, I mean, if you have a headache and you say, okay, I put the filters in my headache, went away. Only you know you had the headache. We can't really prove it. But neurotransmitters, you can't psychosomatically change those. So that's a number that's plotted against the number. You can't change your blood sugar psychosomatically. I always tell people maybe the Dalai Lama can, but you can't. So, okay. So that's a number that's plotted against the number. So that number on the meter really means something. And like Sam said, when it went to school, if the number was above 2,000, you've increased your chances of getting cancer by 25%. If the number was above 1,000, it was down to 15%. So just think if we could get the number down below 50. And the reason I'm saying those numbers just happen to be 35, because when you plug the filter in, as you know, you have no control over what that number's coming down to.
Correct.
So it just happened to be 35 at schools. 37 kids had asthma. We plugged them into a school at a certain school district. And the day we plugged them in, they never used the inhalers after that. And that made like local news and stuff. So, but the same thing from an engineering standpoint would have happened if the number was below 50. So, because it's not going internal. So that's what the numbers mean. It's the energy. It's high frequency energy. It's dV over dt if you have any electrical engineers out there listening, but
You might be listening. And I will say, when I did some shows on this with you guys before and Professor Magnus, we actually had a lot of people buy the units. And I do want these need to be in every single person's household. They're all over mine. I have 4 sons. Every one of my 4 sons has these. And we have measured. I had a son who was working for a company where he was online all the time. And in his office, just his little tiny office, was over 2,000 constantly bombarding him the whole entire day. We got him these, and the numbers came right down to a more livable number. How can everybody get these? What's the cost? And, make sure you mention Naturopathic Dr. Randi Shannon when you go, because we want to know who heard this show and who got them from this show. So go ahead if you would.
Okay, well, you can go to StetzeriElectric.com and order them online, or you can call here, Stetzer Electric. and somebody will walk you through it, or and if you need instructions or whatever. Okay, and just to give you some ideas, like LED lighting is the big thing now. People are putting street lights out. So even if you don't have anything, your street lights, they put 62.5 kilohertz back on the lines. This computer that I'm looking at here is an Apple. It puts 12.5 kilohertz back on all the wires. I got a Dell over here that's putting a tower is putting 16.5 kilohertz. I got a Dell here computer that's puts 50 kilohertz back on the line, but the filters short that out. Okay, so that it'll take care of it. The average home has 2 TVs and 1 computer. The average home takes 20 filters. Okay, so if you go to StetzerElectric.com or call us, I think because the average home has 20, we box them in 20, and they give you a meter and everything. And so you get the kit. There's a kit that you can get with the meter. There you go. You can get the kit and I think it's like $800, I think, for the kit.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saving $100 and some dollars. And if you don't need 20 and you buy 20 and you do the job with 15, you don't need one in every outlet, but you need to check every outlet. But you do the job with 15, send the other 5 back, or use them when you travel. We travel with them and we plug them into the hotel rooms. But yes, and if to just put in the notes or something that you've seen it from your show, or if you call here, just mention it, and so we know.
Yeah. How many do you have in your house, Sam?
We've got about 15 in my house.
About
I have
15.
a small house, but
Okay.
every outlet's got one of those in it. I don't remember how many, but I bought a kit. And what happened to me is about a year ago, I developed a hernia. I've been losing weight. I didn't feel so hot. So they did a CAT scan on me, and I've got pancreatic cancer, which is that sentence. That's a whole year ago. So I set all my equipment back to Dave, except my filters. I kept them and the meters. I set my oscilloscope back and all the other fancy meters that I purchased over the years. So now I've been taking a drug. It's a Chinese anti-malaria drug, and it seems to be doing good for me. I put some of my weight back on, and I'm living.
I've actually had pancreatic cancer clients that were stage 4, given 3 weeks left to live. And they went on my protocols. We'll talk about that after, but they went on my protocols and they were cancer free. So I've actually done interviews with the family members. Everybody is told it's a death sentence, but I personally don't believe it's a death sentence, just based on experience. But, you know,
I've talked to Congress people, and I ordered to send my book free of charge to every member of Congress, and I can't get any takers. Dave's had some experience with that, and nobody seems to will want to believe there's something you can't feel, or except when you get electrocuted, that it can affect your health. But I think we're in real trouble, because in the last year or so, we're starting to radiate the whole Earth from space. We put up thousands of satellites to carry cell phone signals and other things, and war signals, and those are all bombarding the Earth. So there's no safe place on Earth anymore. When I first started my stuff, I could get away from the grid and away from the wires, and it'd be clean. No more. You can't find that anymore. Every place is dirty. So in another 20 years, we're all going to have cancer and other nasty things.
yeah, it's
That's
bad. What is some of the best kind of lighting that we should be putting in our homes to avoid, and try to thwart this and throw these things off? Besides a filter, literally in every room, you have to have the measuring device to know what's being thrown off of everything. Like a toaster will throw off a ton of dirty electricity, and a coffee pot. And everybody thinks, oh, it's no big deal. It is a big deal. It is a very, very big deal. It's the difference between cancer or not, in my opinion, and in some of your studies. So, talk about real quick the lighting that would be acceptable. And also, you told a story to me one time, and I want to say it was a new development that had gone in, and there was I don't know if it was solar or windmills or something, and the whole community was getting cancer. Do you remember that story?
Okay, there's something called the Shirley Wind Farm, and it's over by Green Bay, Wisconsin, Brown County. And these people, it was kind of a really nice area, and it was the people started building new homes and things out there. It was a rural, farming community, and then they developed it. And so they had acreage, like these lots would be 3, 4 acres or something, and they built these beautiful homes out there, upper middle class, okay? No mansions, things like that. And then all of a sudden, because it's kind of off by Lake Michigan, and so you have a lot of wind there. And so they came in and they put a bunch of wind towers out there. People started getting cancer. People started getting very sick. They couldn't live in those homes, and now they're not gazillionaires, so they can't. They had to move to a different house, and now they still have a house payment here, so they had to really step down, live in an apartment. So there was articles in the papers and things like that. So I went over there and I took some measurements and things like that for this people. This group hired me, and the Brown County Health Department declared it a health hazard. But and it really is. But then politics gets involved, and so when it went up to the state level, these public service commissioners, okay, they're appointed by the governor. The governor gets a lot of soft money from the electric utilities. Okay, so all of a sudden now, then the county or the state health department says, no, it's not a public health hazard. Yet the statistics show that it truly is. People are, most of them, a lot of them are dead or have died and stuff now from the cancers. So yeah, wind is a bad thing if you're living next to a wind farm. 50 kilohertz, the wind towers will put 50 kilohertz back on the line. If you have solar, it'll put 20 kilohertz back on the line. So, and 25 kilohertz is associated with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I was in Russia and I seen they actually made weapons with this stuff, and you can look it up. It's called Project Pandora. So these frequencies, and like this, going back to your question about the lights, incandescent was the safest, okay, but now you can't get it. But the sine wave looked a certain way when it went in. It looks the same way when it comes out. LEDs are really bad. They put 62.5 and 31.25 kilohertz back on all the wires. But some of the LED manufacturers are starting to put a tuned filter at the base of their light, so it doesn't do that. So the best thing to do, that meter that you have there is really a good tool, because if you don't know, you can screw on, buy a light bulb, put it in a lamp and turn it on, turn it off, and just plug the meter into the same outlet that lamp is plugged into. If the number goes up, you got a problem. If it doesn't, fine. And so you don't know which manufacturers, and nobody's advertising it because of liability. Because if they advertise and say, okay, ours is clean, well, yeah, but then you're admitting that the ones you made before were not clean. So it gets to be a kind of a problem. So halogen lighting's probably okay, but it's expensive and it's bright and things like that. So the best thing to do, and then if people call and they have LEDs, sometimes we can just put our own filter, not one like this, but actually disassemble it and take a part out of it or something, or buy the component, and you can put it right in the box. An electrician can do that to help you with lighting. But yes, lighting is a problem. Modern day, computers. So in reality, you shouldn't have to buy our equipment. In reality, the manufacturers of this stuff, they know that they're putting, Apple knows that it's 12.5 kilohertz being put on this line. So they could put, and we originally didn't want to have a product to sell because we thought it took away from our credibility as experts. So we went to the manufacturers and they told us to get the heck out of here, but because it would add $5 to the cost of the computer. But they could put a tuned filter in there because our filter is kind of we have to take care of the lighting, we have to take care of the computers, we have to take this broad spectrum, okay? And it does a real good job on it. But if you know your frequency, and it's like say 20 or 12.5 kilohertz, then we can just make a tuned filter with just like probably $2 worth of components and put it in there, and it'll take all the care of just the 20 kilohertz.
Amazing. So again, I want everybody to go get the book by Samuel Milham. It's on Amazon, very inexpensive. I'm looking at it right now, $12.05, but there's probably even other ones. There's probably even some used ones. Make sure you get them. Incredible book. We could talk for hours on this, you guys, because, you know, it's such an important topic. And I believe we'll probably get back together, maybe even bring on Professor, it was Magdus, right? Is that how you say it? Magda Havas?
Magda Havas, yes. She's done a tremendous amount of research on this. She's one of the world's leading authorities.
So we will bring her in. And I also want to introduce you guys to a doctor, a naturopathic physician, which I think that you'll enjoy as well. 85 years of age, and he always talks about electricity was the day the day of the end. And he was right. And you know, when I became a naturopathic doctor, and I would look to see how many so-called incurable diseases that there were. And the internet would tell me between 400 and 500. Then I saw it creep to 600. Then a couple of years ago, before I went live on a big show, I did a quick search and I found over 1,000 now that they're calling so-called incurable diseases. And I believe that this topic right here is one of the main reasons, not the only reason, but one of the main reasons why we are in such trouble and have shorter lifespans in this country. And, you know, it's a huge contributing factor. So Dave, if you would give out your website and spell it so that they get it right, and even put out the phone number that you would want them to have. And I highly suggest that you get a minimum of the 20 filters, because you can always give them to loved ones or your kids or whatever. And this is the measuring device, and you have to have at least one. You can share, you know, borrow. This is the more expensive of the deal, but worth it. And then every one of the filters, they are all over my house. I also travel with them. Every one of my 4 sons has them. I've left them with my parents and my sister, and I've had many, many clients that bought them. And I always am suggesting this to people. So David, if you would give out the website.
Sure. It's Stetzer. It's STETZER electric spelled out .com, and that'll give you that. And then it's 608-989-2571 is the office phone. And if you want to talk to me, we have other people here, but if you want to talk to me, just ask for me. And if I'm busy, I'll call you back for sure. But I mean, I don't do that. And if you need help or any questions, you know, just call. You know, we're not charging for answering your questions, and be happy to help you.
Outstanding. Sam, did you want to say anything else?
Dirty Electricity, Amazon, and I give my phone number too. I answer the
Absolutely,
phone.
give it out.
My home phone is 360-866-3569. And I'll answer any calls I have. If I need a machine, I'll borrow it back from Dave.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, gentlemen. This show was important for everybody's health. And, you know, together between the 3 of us, we're helping. The goal is to help save humanity and, you know, stop these diseases and these sicknesses. I hesitate to say certain words so we don't get flagged. I want this to stay up on the social media for a long time so that everybody can see this. Thank you. God bless you both. And we will talk to you very soon. Thank you so much.
Nice meeting you.